Oh.
Are we on? Are we rocking and rolling?
Yeah, we should be streaming. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's left to me then. Welcome to the 125th meeting of the Extinctionati. It is the 20th of November of the year is 2022. Everything is going downhill fast. This is the week when yet another COP has passed with even less hope for redemption for humanity. So we're sitting here waiting to see our species and the rest of the living planet flush down the toilet. On that jolly note, does anybody have any topic to discuss today? Well, we're kind of winging it. We started off maybe with the increasingly exciting political system in the United States. And yeah, would you like to fill in, Corn-Fed? And the funny
thanks,
weather.
Bob. Yeah, such a great introduction to these meetings. Thank you for that. It's fantastic. Well, yeah, 125th meeting, the Extinctionati. That's quite a number. That's fantastic. Yeah, holy cow, weather's been weird. It's a strange situation out here. Very, very strange year. We're third El Nino year in a row. We're still getting wildfires on the West Coast because of driving winds. Strange stuff indeed. But yeah, you asked just briefly about the political situation. You know, I've been a little underwater this last week. I haven't followed too closely, but I think everyone likely knows we are transitioning, in a way from the softer, gentler neoliberal fascism in America into the, slightly more hardcore fascism, perhaps. It's a little tricky. The Republicans have taken control of the U.S. House of Representatives. So after 2 years of the Biden administration, now the Democrats and Biden will be completely hobbled for the next 2 years. We'll be hearing a ton about Hunter Biden's laptop, for reasons that escape me. Unsure why. But, it's going to be, once again, as is the norm, after the first 2 years of any new president in the United States, the Congress gets locked up and now nothing will occur. Expect the United States to be perilously close to defaulting on all of its debts over the next 2 years. Economic turmoil, political loggerheads with nothing moving. And of course, that means continued war, oil extraction, and everything else we've been doing recently. So, the news is more the same, I suppose. Fun times.
It is all a bit samey, isn't it? It's almost like a boring apocalypse.
Yeah, they settled into this rut.
Yeah. So is there a sort of? I mean, people react to Trump in such a strong way, and I don't feel like I'm that bothered about whether it's Trump or any other sort of weirdo. But is this a thing that's coming up in America? I remember that the back in the day, you had that whole like Russiagate thing, and there was like this massive level of hysteria that like Trump is the worst thing that ever happened. Is there a prospect for Trump actually successfully becoming the president yet again? And if not, then is the alternative going to be worse, better, or indifferent, I suppose?
Yeah, these are great questions, and they're really interesting questions, at least to me. Yes, there's definitely a chance Trump will become president again, and much depends on investigations into his financial dealings and, selling nuclear secrets to foreign nations, who even knows what's going to come of those investigations. But regardless of the investigations, if he's held accountable to any of those actions is yet another question that is probably going to be a no. And then, of course, there are people like Ron DeSantis waiting in the wings. to become the next, Republican, put up the walls, Fortress America kind of fascistic leader of this nation. It's just kind of fascinating to me, so Trump has been blamed for a slate of candidates that he endorsed. And I think this is complicated, but those candidates were reality TV personalities, charismatic people who have no experience in politics, and kind of the populist sort of folks that he tends to run with. You wash my hand, I'll wash yours kind of people. And generally they lost. There was a bit of a repudiation of this movement, but you know how it goes. The queen is dead, long live the queen. What they're doing is going underground and seizing the law and voting systems in states across the US. They're working to pass laws in states where the states can take control of their electoral college votes and influence the US election. And, doing work where, people like Ron DeSantis, who created an election force police to police the elections in Florida state, is now the leading frontrunner for the Republicans. So if Trump does not win the nomination, then somebody like Ron DeSantis will, which is just a less eye-catching, less annoying version of Trump. And this is a real threat here in 2 years. Basically this kind of fascistic movement is just going to ground and strengthening its roots. So that's certainly a pretty big problem. I think that the way people vote and the nature of this election, unfortunately is not very good for America. I guess that's a quick summary. Excellent questions.
Yeah, I guess so. I was just thinking, not very good for America. What's good for America is good for Milo Minderbinder, or was it the other way around? But I don't know. I don't know what a DeSantis is. I've got no conscious idea, but I assume it's ideologically the same as Trump anyway, but just with a different type of wig or slightly less entertaining version of the same thing. Here we've got a scenario in the UK where they've, really put this kind of comedy drone sort of character in charge of the opposition. It's almost difficult to think that they've not been put there to make sure that however bad the current ruling party is, that no one would vote for the opposition. But if they did happen to vote for the opposition, then the opposition would be the same anyway. And so it's like the more farcical the electoral system appears, the more terrifying it is that the general public doesn't really want to acknowledge what a load of crap it is, and that we're living in an authoritarian system. And from that point of view, what I can see from America, it's sort of the same thing. Do I understand correctly that your fellow Biden sort of made some promises about students not having to pay off their odious debts, and it was all just a bit of flim-flam? And then over the recent elections, the Democrat Party sort of threatened everyone to say, if you vote for the Republicans to dominate whatever the recent elections, the abortion issue is going to get fucked by the Republicans. But then the Democrats, they kind of gained an edge, but they've also said, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about the abortion thing now. Am I on the right page there?
That is not incorrect at all. That's from a perspective, I think that's a pretty good summary. Now that
so the Democrats keep promising this, some sort of improvements to the stuff that people don't like about the Republicans, and then they retract. Oh
yeah, I mean, the big problem is the Democrats in this situation aren't necessarily wrong. It's just that they don't hold any power. Since the first midterm election of the Obama presidency, there's been a slow crunching down of the political power of the left in the United States. Nothing new. I think the history there is very old. But, for example, Obama's signature achievement in Congress was the healthcare bill. And the healthcare bill that was passed was initially a proposal by right-wing think tanks. They destroyed the first proposal. The Republicans were able to block and demolish the second proposal. And basically the Obama administration passed just what the Republicans allowed them to have. And this is a process that's been increasingly true in the US. The Democrats are right to say if people don't come out, then the Republicans may push the ball further on abortion. And that is true. And unfortunately, the Republicans did seize the House and can now block any federal action to address restrictions on abortion popping up in states across the nation. It's this creeping fascism, of the worst sort. And this is really true with voter disenfranchisement in states across the nation, where Republicans, in a very old tactic, but now bolder than ever, are making it more difficult for folks to come out and vote. They're turning people away from the polls. And, a lot of this Trump circus has caused people to kind of cast their eyes away from electoral politics anyway. And that reminds me of the story you described about the UK, where they're demoralizing the populace, working to get them to think that all politics is just a circus, and people are not entirely wrong about that, of course. But it really reminds me of how, Putin's Russia has subdued the Russian population, where politics is kind of taboo and distasteful, and people really hate engaging with it because it's spectacular and god-awful and intractable. We're well on that way in the United States, where people eschew politics completely because, there's no faith that anything positive will happen from that system. And the circus with DeSantis and Trump only makes it worse.
I mean, I guess
the voter disenfranchisement makes it worse. Yeah.
If we don't have any power to affect anything, and never did, I suppose I'd rather the public had the perception that was the case. Yeah, I don't feel like I know anything about Russia as it is today, and what the kind of vibe on the street is vis-a-vis their erstwhile leadership. Yeah, I don't know anything about Russia, to be honest. It's very hard to find out anything about Russia because obviously our entire media is dedicated to lying about Russia.
You got to sit through all the propaganda.
Yeah, to me, if people are completely cynical about politics and think it's a waste of fucking time, then that's fine, because the next step is to then go, oh, I live in an authoritarian system, and if I wanted to change something about the way things work, I'm going to have to use my pitchfork or my ability to not participate, if that's the alternative.
Yeah, I think this is the interesting thing to me. I agree. I don't, I do follow politics intensely, but I think the thing that runs the story, the primary factor is the energy situation, which governs the economy, which governs the politics. So it's a secondary or third function of these material realities, right? The interesting thing to me is, if the populace is excited or not, how riled up are people? And you can subdue them, just by making it distasteful and having them look away and focus in on their personal lives only. Or if they get riled up, you can misdirect them, into movements like Trumpism, or movements like supporting kind of the solutions that may not go anywhere through the Democratic Party. So in the United States, I think that we're a bit more riled up than, say, folks in Russia, but we're so deeply misdirected, it's incredible.
Yeah, because the riled up contingent of the American public that I get to see is the stereotype of these sort of, my guns, all of that sort of stuff. And
well, that's pretty real.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I was in the States here many years ago, and I was involved in a band, and I was going to go, and we were going to drive around and play gigs and stuff. And there were some of us were not Americans, and some were Americans. And the American contingent were talking about how they'd have their guns in the van. And we were like, I'm not driving to a gig with a gun, thank you. Because it just seemed like the most bizarre thing. Bearing in mind that I grew up in a country where everybody's got guns in Israel. And so that I wasn't quite as alien to guns as an English person might be who doesn't hunt pheasant. But yeah, so that stereotype always kind of stuck for me. But yeah, so you've got these sort of social group. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just, there's a little thing tapping me on the shoulder, sort of that everything I think about America is probably somewhat mixed between reality and a sort of pastiche from Don't Look Up, or Idiocracy or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah,
just amazing.
yeah, that basically when the Americans get riled up, basically all the sort of white supremacy people and the sort of woke brigade, so to speak, the lefty, so far as there is a lefty contingent, they're all just going to try and shoot each other, and then
Yeah.
the ruling class get to continue on whatever they want to do.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. If somebody was looking at a managed collapse in different nations, I mean, Russia, for example, has starved populations. There's some interesting things going on with the war in Ukraine, with energy and food exports. There, all these different ways that you might try to subdue a population. But in the U.S., all bets are off with these arms. I mean, it's just staggering how much lethal power the average American has access to, and how irresponsible and politically misdirected they are. It's just incredible. So I'm sure that'll end well.
Yeah, I think it
I'll keep
will.
providing
Yeah.
updates as long as I'm behind a bunker where I can stay out of fire.
Well, yeah, when you're still there. I mean, I'm wondering if in Britain, there's going to be people bludgeoning each other with whatever blunt objects are available. And I wonder about the sort of contingents of that there are different communities here who might have had different experiences. Like a lot of the European people living here came from places where maybe they're the lifestyle is a bit more rough and ready, shall we say. And I sort of imagine that any like Eastern Europeans living here would be able to adapt a lot better than most sort of born English people to a scenario when there's some sort of social breakdown and there's a need to act in different ways and maybe defend oneself against this, that, and the other going on. So yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, in the United States, everybody will be shooting at each other. In England, we'll be whacking each other over the head with cricket bats and whatnot, and kitchen knives probably. Yeah, Sophie, in Ireland, they're no strangers to like martial conflict, I guess. Or there is some sort of background.
British better be careful. No, I don't know. To be honest, I've been a bit off the hook for the last couple of weeks, and I only listen to the local radio. I get news from the village, so I'm not really au fait of what's going on much in Ireland at the moment, apart from locally. But what I see is here, as other European countries, the managed extinction and the controlled authoritarian control is starting by giving people who are facing difficulties now with their electricity bills and everything and heating a lot of money on top of welfare and pensions and whatever help, because Ireland is quite a welfare state, quite actually looks after its people quite well. But there, it seems like they're cushioning the blow so that people are going to get used to have the government, the provider there, and it's kind of a disguise UBI, disguise kind of control that is in a way as toxic and dangerous as full-blown fascism. Because when you talk about risk of authoritarianism, and we're already in that, it's just that it has a different aspect, even in America, even in Europe. But what I see here is an increasingly the control on people with their with money, allowances and stuff like that, which could turn into UBI. Yeah, I don't know if you have that experience in the rest of Europe, but I think the lying bastards in Brussels are trying to do the same everywhere. I think they're cushioning the blows in different ways by changing taxes and, you know, trying to change this absurdity of sanctions that they started. So that's all I can say. What I can say more is environmentally. I have trees budding, Guelder rose budding. I have nasturtiums growing. I picked a raspberry a few days ago. Flowers, marigolds, etc., outside, full bloom. It's quite worrying because if there's a frost, everything will die, and it might be a problem with growth again. There's still leaves on certain trees. Yeah, there's an extremely what is it now? 20th of November. I think in the last 20 days, there's nearly been gale force winds every day. You know, you sometimes, yeah, near storm. So that is a bit more than what is usually here, but temperatures are mild for the season, though it gets cold at night. So yeah, that's my impression from here. There you go.
Yeah, that temperature, you know, if things are blooming right now, that's a strange situation. You know, I'm just curious
we've got
about
that as well in England.
Huh.
Same. It's mental.
strong winds too.
That's the curry I had yesterday.
I was kind of curious though about the
It's bizarre. The Atlantic is very bizarre. Lots of climatologists and forecast people are talking about changes on the various Atlantic currents and wind and sea. But what I can observe is I'm outside all the time. I'm watching at the sky all day, and I've got at the sea all day, and I see things changing so much, and I'm trying to. I just pinch myself. Say, is this November? What's happening? And the old people. I'm friendly with old farmers here in their 80s and other people down the road, and they've been saying that for years, but now they're looking at, you know, but they're at the end of their lives and they think, oh fuck, like, you know, what's going to happen now? Like they've been. I've been listening to old people for a long time here because I like their company and I get on well with the old people because they showed me a lot of things in gardening and all that, and they've been telling me that the Atlantic has changed since the 80s, since I've been here. They've been saying that. But you know, we're very much in the present now, in the news and the this like that. So people are just only starting to, and those idiots in the COP27 are just talking about compensating people with money for, you know. What do you think about that circus that's going on in Sharm el Sheikh?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, these systems are going to fall away faster than they'll send the paychecks. You know, it's just a scam. You know, and I feel bad for folks who might be counting on that kind of compensation because, you know, that's false promises. As the economy crunches down, you know, that money is not even worth anything in the first place. But yeah, it's just incredible where I'm at to see, you know, because I was here as a kid, just to see it's so radically different from then. So I noticed big changes, you know, in 5-year periods coming back to where I am now. But now it just seems like the changes are apparent almost year after year, you know, seeing pretty dramatic climactic shifts. But, you know, I wanted to ask you also about the Irish welfare system and what's going on there as far as the government's approach to UBI and Irish welfare. I was curious, how is the Irish debt situation with the world economy, and how's their energy imports? Like, the reason I ask is, how long can they keep up subsidizing the public before they're bankrupt or run out of energy to do it before things break loose?
I don't know. Ireland has finished paying back all its debt from 2008 this year. So all the bank scandals, you know, all the big thing that happened in 2008 in Europe, that's finished. But Ireland is entirely is a non-industrial country. It's a neutral country militarily. So I think they've got one plane in their air force, and they might have one or two. Do you know, how do you call those things for war on land? Those big tanks, and then they have a few boats, Navy, but it's for marine observation. So military, there's no budget. Industry, there's hardly nothing apart from pharmaceutical and high-tech medical things. Most of the backbone of the investors in Ireland are American, with Google, Facebook, and pharmaceuticals. So they have companies here. They have big headquarters. They have also a lot of servers. So America is behind a lot of even though we're in Europe, up until now, I think Ireland was giving a very, very juicy capital, what you call corporation tax. That was one of the lowest in Europe, and they're kind of challenging that now, the rest of Europe. But I don't think they've come to a settlement. So it's a great incentive for Americans to come here and have their companies here. So I'm trying to remember exactly what you asked me, but the welfare situation and the coming UBI here, and what's going to happen when they can't do it anymore. Well, I suppose it's going to be the same as in the rest of Europe. You know, there's going to. I don't know. I honestly don't. I'm not equipped to answer that question, because I'm really not very good at economy. I just observe. So far, they seem to be able to unblock enormous amount of money for COVID. They were giving people €350 a week during the COVID, and they were not working. Now that's, I don't know. Don't forget, there's only 5 million people living here. So, you know, when you talk in terms of budget for welfare, you're not talking the figures that you have in Germany or France or the UK. Okay, there's a big population of working here. It's a young population. In Ireland, there's few elderly, but there's not this. It's not exactly the same demographic as Europe. It's another type of profile. So there is an aging population, but not as fast as in other countries. So you could say that the unemployed and the elderly and the people who are in poverty have it better in a way here at the moment than in a lot of other European countries.
That's really interesting. And it sounds like the debt situation, if that's good, they can just print money like it's monopoly money. So that seems okay. But do you have any sense of the food balance?
Only the European Bank can print that
the European
money.
Central Bank.
Okay, gotcha. Euro system. Do you know the food balance? Food exports, imports? Like, I assume Ireland's a net food importer.
Yeah, we import. We have a lot. We actually we export a lot of meat and dairies and other products. Oh. Yeah,
that bodes well.
People depend here mostly on they used to depend on the UK, but they still do in a certain way for all the shite food, like, you know, the soft drinks and the biscuits and the things that we don't need. Otherwise, there's a network of supermarkets that are European based, who have the same global supply chains as everywhere else. You know, people get their bananas from the same place and whatever. No, Ireland is pretty resilient in terms of food production. So there, in terms of vegetables, meat and dairy products, cereals, there's not much, but there's not enough probably for the bread. So I'd say we get quite a lot of cereals from Canada, and there's some from Europe, of course. Now, in terms of energy, it's a mix between the Corrib here, Corrib gas. We have gas from an offshore thing here. So, but it's not really enough for everything. So there is UK, Norway, essentially.
It sounds relatively pretty good.
Electricity is about 20% wind. It's about 20% hydro, and the rest is a mixture of different thermal different energy I'm tired. New energy plants that are either used to be powered by peat. Here there was turf, but there's also other, like oil and different, I think that's roughly. Now, I'm not a specialist. I might be making a huge mistake. If there's an Irish person that listens to this, please correct me. But it's roughly what I read the last time I read something about our energy. We have there's no energy, no atomic energy here. The country is totally opposed, like they're opposed to war. Like that's why we're neutral. We're too small anyway. Yeah. There you go. We have only one motorway, and we're, it's just it's a country that's very small with little roads, and there's only one big city, is Dublin, where there's 1 million and a few million and a half people, and that's it. All the rest, the big cities, have got less than 400,000 people or 200,000 people, and then I'd say there's an enormous majority of the population that's rural.
At least you have roads.
Oh yeah, you have to. My road, you can only have one car. You have to park and someone let the other car pass. But
where I live, there are no intercity roads. You can
that's great. I mean,
you can only travel in your own city.
So much the better. So much the better. Yeah. And we live on tourism. A lot of this tourism. That's the thing. That's another thing for Ireland. Yeah. There you go.
That's fascinating.
We meet to Egypt, and it used to be Libya too, and different because there is some what you call them, halal slaughterhouses, especially for the Muslim market. They apparently really like the sheep and the beef from here. Most of the cattle is in open field. Nearly all the cattle is in open field. There's none of the intensive food production. Maybe for chickens in a few places, but not much. Same for the dairy. There you go, little overlook of Ireland.
That's another one, because the Americans will have food, won't they? Because you grow all that corn and stuff. I suppose you've got potentially, because we're not going to have anything to eat. The English are going to be screwed.
Yeah, but Hugh, do you remember what Hugh said? He said that the Irish Sea has been used before by the British to come here, and they know that across the Irish Sea
there's fair enough. Yeah.
Hordes.
Yeah, but I ain't getting any of it though, is it? That's all going to Sunak and his mates. They'll come and take your steaks and your,
They'll have to know how to maneuver a boat, and I can tell you that our ancestors and the ancestors of the British used to know how to maneuver boats. Now, I don't know if there's many English people who could cross the Irish Sea.
No, I don't. Not. Well, there's probably enough seafaring people around, but then you'd have to
they'll be too selfish to come in hordes.
Yeah. Well, but it's an interesting point. It's amazing to think that everybody here used to know something about the sea.
But the skills are getting lost. The skills are completely lost. The sea skills.
Absolutely.
See, when they've destroyed because I forgot to mention the fishing here, which is I mean, Ireland has had the most fantastic waters for fish for hundreds of years. But in the 80s, the farmers who had a big lobby here, and Brussels was offering big, juicy subsidies for farmers. But so in exchange of subsidizing an industry, I could say an industry where people were going to inflate the amount of sheep and cattle they were having, the fishing rights were given away. And instead of 100 miles or more of territorial waters for the Irish fishermen, it was reduced to 20 miles. So, which means that the big boats from Spain and France and all around started to come and plow the sea and destroy everything. I mean, with their big, now it's factory ships. They also started to make things very difficult for the little fishermen who had little boats, or even fishing from traditional corricks, which are handmade boats, and depleting the stocks. So little by little, they started to literally kill the little fishermen. So that's the small. I was my first husband here in Ireland was a fisherman for lobster and crab and things like that, and he only had a few pots. It was just 30, 40 pots, and you live from a season to another. You wouldn't do any fishing in the winter, but there was piles of people living like that. They had a moderate income. The market for those sort of shellfish was good on Europe, so there was there was always a bit of work for everybody, but that was annihilated, totally annihilated. So, but there is still fishing here, but the stocks are dying because they're being fished by huge factory ships who are out. You can see them if you go really high up on a mountain. They're not that far. They're enormous things. Okay.
Does anyone still have salmon out there? Are there Atlantic salmon in Ireland or
Yeah.
Norway?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. They are there. They've tried to do salmon farms, but it hasn't been very popular. There's been a few local people who have cut nets and stuff. So there's a few that have survived, but it's no, there's still wild salmon, but it's depleted.
All the salmon here is farmed and is like full of disease and stuff, allegedly. Well, no reason not to believe that. But yeah.
When I lived on the East Coast, the Atlantic salmon out there is practically extinct. It's virtually gone everywhere. But out here on the West Coast, there's really decimated salmon runs that are getting more irregular every year. It's probably on the verge of collapse. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's really, it boggles the mind to think how you could destroy like a whole ecosystem like that. And no matter how much Derek Jensen goes on about the salmon, nobody wants to know. And you just think, how do they wipe that out? It's just incredible, absolutely amazing. And there are stories of there being so much salmon, that you could just reach into a river and grab yourself some fish.
Well, I hear that as carbon increases, the oceans turn acidic, we're going to have plenty of jellyfish. So hopefully everyone enjoys their calamari.
Yeah, or we just need some strawberry flavor to turn it into strawberry jelly, I guess. Is it edible, jellyfish?
Not the same thing. Jellyfish, you can't eat it. It's literally water, and it's got no nutrition. You're talking, if you're talking about calamari or octopus or that family, it's a different family to jellyfish.
Yeah,
very different. But the waters have got very well. No, I'm lucky here. The West Coast is still very rich. You've seen it, Joe, when you were here. There's shells, there's seaweed, there's still lots of things, but for the fishing, it's another story. And we don't know, the ecosystems are intact in terms of pollution. The waters are clean. There's possibility of regeneration if all those ships were sank. But I don't feel able to do it on my own. Really, I'd like to. Sometimes I have some fantasies of, having drones and EMPs and stuff like that. But that's only when I'm just dreaming. But yeah. I think I've listened too much to Deep Green Resistance.
Oil prices may do them in. They may not be able to maintain that, but that's already too late, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's hitting the small fishing too, because I was the other day at a guy who I get fish from, and he told me, but Sophie, today there's no boats. And I said, oh, the weather was just okay. He said, no, but they're not going out every day because of the price of fuel. So
yeah.
So it's hitting everybody, but the little ones are hit more hard. The other ones have got good cushions, And those enormous fishing boats factories are slave things. The guys who work on those boats are in horrendous conditions. It's just a nightmare. They don't let people near them. You can't even go and film near them. The guys from Greenpeace, and you see how they are when they send, what do they spray them with water? They don't let them near. Anything filmed on those boats would be wow, and they throw back in the ocean loads and loads of fish that they don't use. So they just harvest and kill and just keep what they want, and all the rest is sent down to the bottom to be eaten by the crabs, if there's any crabs left.
These are terrible operations.
But there's a very interesting map that you can look at. It's called Marine Traffic. And you just, it's a radar thing. Like you have all the ships at sea at the moment where you look at it. So you can locate and find out what type of vessel there is at a certain moment in front of you or on any coast. And you can look at the details of the fishing boats and all sorts of other boats. But you can see the sizes, the tonnage, and what they do and how long they stay at sea. It's extremely interesting to watch that.
Going South asks for good news. Well, if oil prices keep climbing as they're bound to eventually, you know, some of these last remaining dwindling ecosystems might get a huge resurgence, which would be really great to see, as long as they haven't gone extinct first.
Yeah, and I was reminded that we actually do have good news. So the good news is that we are able to have news at all, because there was a very near thermonuclear war a couple of days ago. I think a guy called Zelensky was trying to false flag an attack on Poland or something, and then there was the guy who stopped the nuclear war was a Polish potato farmer who was out walking with his iPhone, and he took a picture of the remains of the rocket, and that was identified as a Ukrainian rocket and another Russian one, and that's why we're sitting here instead of grilling in the radiation outside. So
Thus
yeah.
we teeter on the razor's edge, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes no news is good news, I think. Looking at that.
Isn't Zelensky trying to still maintain? Isn't he's still trying to convince people
Yes,
to start the
does.
war, the
But
nuclear war?
it's not his only trick. It's also trying to bomb the nuclear power stations in Ukraine, of course, in order to blame Russia, so that we have to start a nuclear war. You know, he's been going on about NATO needs to start a nuclear war for the past 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, looks very promising down there, I guess. If you're looking for collapse, I don't know.
But that nuclear plant is under Russian control at the moment, isn't it? And so it's very obvious that it's the Ukrainians who have been trying to bomb it. Or am I remembering that correctly? So it's just like the attempts to provoke or you know to create the circumstances under which whoever it is can launch some nukes against Russia. It's just so obvious. I don't know. They're not even trying to lie properly.
Yeah, I know. But I guess we should be thankful that they are so crappy liars, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe. So it's got to be thankful for something.
Yeah, it's kind of looking like that video I posted earlier of that guy talking about the oh, what's that book? First Class Passengers on a Sinking Ship. The author, can't remember his name, said at the end that pretty much the only kind of war the United States could fight is a nuclear war, because the U.S. military is like so corporatized. It's kind of he called it like a white elephant, I think. Yeah, so that's dangerous shit right there. If if the only option they have is a nuclear war, yeah, that's not good.
The isn't the American yeah, am I right in thinking the Americans have never actually won a war, and that the average American sort of military personnel, if they get like 10 minutes away from a McDonald's, they break down? Yeah, so it sounds credible that the only option they have is nukes. Woo!
Well, it's It's ironic given Milo Minderbinder came up earlier, so I think that's apropos. So right on that trail. I mean, we have just the most lethal technology from Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and all that. But yeah, we prefer to pilot it from video game controllers a continent away. Now, I think winning or losing a war all depends on what your goal is in the first place. And, if it's military contractor payouts, I think we've won all of our wars. But, depends on your perspective, as always.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's just, yeah, everything's going pretty freaking crazy. I do remember in some of the last Extinctionati meetings with Hugh, he did mention that a long proxy war in one way would be good because of how much emissions the military emits. It's probably some of the most in the world. So that might help the Greenland ice sheet to melt faster in the long run.
Yeah. And, I think what's going on here, with Russia and in the US is that, neither of these parties are going to lose without launching nukes. Uh, you know, uh, Russia is not going to be defeated as a nation entirely without launching nukes, nor would the US. But so they can have this nice little proxy war in the Ukraine where the US is trying to drain Russia's military because I think that they're just kind of a big piggy bank going into the future of a lot of resources and economy to put under their thumb. Um, but man, we are perilously close to nuclear war at every moment now. It's pretty wild. I don't know how you can ever figure these things out except for after the fact, but I wonder how this would compare to the Cuban Missile Crisis or other similar events.
Well, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, in inverted commas, is or was just in Ukraine trying to make sure that every British person has a nuclear target on their back now, telling us how much he loves Ukraine and all that shit. So bring it on, man. Let's get it over with. That's my view. The suspense is killing me already. But I mean, I'm still reasonably sold on this idea that the Russians would be less likely to start with the nuclear weapons, because I think that they sort of have the upper hand in the sense that they're sitting on a big pile of resources, and as far as I understand it, the energy. Actually, that reminds me. I don't know if anybody's seen the latest Nate Hagen's thing, who's whatever your sort of bourgeois. Sort of, I don't know, clean cut, not quite a doomer, but fairly realistic sounding. But why am I saying that now? I've forgotten what that was about. But yeah, just the I think that the Russians basically they're sitting on energy and they're sitting on like a massive food supply, and everything's kind of all right for them. So I don't know if the United States is looking at losing its power in the world, and Russia, it can't lose power in the world. Like Russia's sitting very comfortably where it's at. Europe should be groveling to Russia, I think, at the moment and saying, "Come on, let's be friends." And instead, there's the whole suicide of European economies that we've discussed. But yeah, I guess the thing is, if America goes and hits the red button, I'm sure the Russians would be glad to retaliate. But I just can't see why they would be the ones to start it, I suppose. But who knows?
Well, I'm not sure who would start what, but isn't it possible too that the petrodollar is what's propping up all these rich, like what they call the globalists? The petrodollar is propping all those guys up. So I wonder if yeah, I wonder the extent of that because there's all this talk about getting rid of dollar hegemony, which I think would be a good thing because USA doesn't deserve to manage anything. This country is so horrible now with how it does things. It's just brutal murder like the Roman Empire now. And it's like, yeah, I'm not sure though because if the petrodollar is what's giving those global elites their power, it's going to be interesting because they would all have to get on board to drop the dollar for something else, and I'm not sure where to look for that kind of signature.
Weren't the Saudis considering throwing their lot in with the BRICS lot?
I think
Yeah,
so.
they're toying with it.
Can I mention that since we talk about nukes, I have an internet friend in New Zealand, and he actually thinks that because America has a lot of nuclear weapons, it's kind of like the joke about to a hammer everything looks like a nail. So he's thinking that instead of actually doing anything about climate situation, America would just simply nuke Saudi Arabia or nuke Russia or something, and create a lot of dust to try to cool the planet with a nuclear winter or five, and it's kind of a consequence of spending so much money on nuclear bombs. So at some point they want to use it, but they don't want to, stop using their cars. And,
it's part of the chess game. When they started, this European, when the French started nuclear and all the other countries, there was the theory of dissuasion, and that it was another piece on the game of chess. It was overwhelming everything, because from the moment we could annihilate humanity, there's something so heavy in the background that, I mean, of course, there's Dr. Strangelove scenarios with the psychopaths that are ruling us, and that is the danger. That is the danger. But I personally, when you talked about that danger of World War III with the thing in Poland there and all that, I'd never felt that was going to happen. I don't know. I was just, maybe it's just because I'm a denier, but I knew that there's these little needle things that they're throwing at people all the time. You see, you were talking about the suicide of Europe with the sanctions. Okay, well, we haven't. I remember a few meetings ago, maybe a while ago, when it started to happen, and Bob was talking about that a lot. But we haven't analyzed what's behind this suicide. I think that's where the knot is. There is no reason. There is no logical reason for those sanctions. So there is another agenda, and that's what we have to discuss, I think.
Well, presumably that is the sort of preempting the collapse of everything.
Yeah.
Thing. If the question is whether the people in charge are really reconciled to collapse, whether they're aware of the coming problems, if they're deliberately trying to, sort of wind things down in advance of a really sort of hitting the fucking wall at 100 miles an hour scenario. But yeah, so to deindustrialize Europe, I mean, it strikes me that the reason for it is that everybody in the European Union is basically some sort of CIA asset, directly or indirectly. There's an Epstein file with your name on it if you're in the German government or wherever, and they're going to, basically they've somehow got the European leadership to support this project of getting Europe to stupidly pretend that they're going to buy American gas, because that seems to be the project.
Again, but that's again above. I mean, those are the consequences. But I'm talking about after COVID, like just before COVID, where everything was going to shit, when we were starting I was starting to interact with you, and I was talking with a few people at the time about this coming economical catastrophe. And then COVID came, and now Europe was at a much better place before the war, because it was America that was looking like it was going to collapse first, and that the dollar was going to hit really. So has it rebalanced something? And I think it has. And America is behind this suicide in Europe. That I 100% 100% agree with you, Bob. It's they want to have a base again. They want to expand NATO. They want their markets. They want everything. I know that, but there is still something about the leaders of Europe that I don't get. I don't get at the moment, and I'm living here, and I've lived in 2 or 3 different countries in Europe, and I've got lots of connections in different countries of Europe, and I'm missing a. You see, it's part of my reflections. This when I'm musing or when I'm not, busy. I've got. It's like it's when you're in a murder mystery and you're missing a clue and a big one, and I'm trying to dig it out.
I can't. Europe is such a fascinating case to me. If I can just quickly paint a bigger picture, it's my sense that the folks who are steering these ships know that we're heading into rough water. If you look at the US, China, and Russia, they see the writing on the wall, and they don't, like any of us, I don't think they know quite how bad climate and ecosystem will be, or energy, but they know it's going to be bad. And so I think that what we're seeing in the war in Ukraine is jockeying for position for that future. Russia has a great energy situation and food situation, but they need to secure it by seizing Ukraine. The US, on the other hand, and NATO, notably, is declining and in trouble. And so they're looking for Ukraine, either to deny it from Russia so they can raid Russia later, or to catch Ukraine's oil and food resources to kind of fuel the continuation of NATO and supporting Europe. So they're jockeying here for that global warming future. The trick is, Europe, I think for a decade or more, has been a third world nation state for the US. It's been a satellite zone. It just seems to me that, the US respects Europe as just another set of markets and extraction area. And Europe is hoping that US protection will, kind of save them. But I don't, all that I can think of is that Europe has become subservient to NATO interests and the economic system behind the US, and can't find a way out of that. Like, I think they're in a trap.
In such a sort of gobsmackingly groveling fashion.
It's because the Russians know about the Zanebikov effect. I'm joking.
Maybe.
But maybe not, maybe yes. But this is another little call to the flippening again, because I mean it's been appearing on the sub this week, and I seen a very good picture that you made, DB. I think it was very funny, and it was very well made, and I think we have left the flippening in the background for a while. What's your, you see, it was in that test that you put on the sub, Confed, that one of the mechanism of collapse would be this, and the flippening was in it, and there was a few people who voted for that, and I'm neither a believer or a non-believer on that line. I'm exploring that, and I like it very much.
Well,
anyway, it's a good place to be,
Yeah, my idea with the meme was to get something to make people curious. That's about it. Kind of scare them a little bit, make them curious, because if they start Googling that shit, they'll fall into a rabbit hole, and that's the whole point. So it'd be cool if that meme got spread everywhere.
But I think I was wondering, how do you know if that picture of yours was shared or was put on other social media or anything like that? Do you have a way of knowing that, of following that, or because it would be, I don't know. I was going to put it on their collapsing, and I don't like that group, so I just didn't want to give them the gift of that. But I might put it on another.
I'm not too sure because I'm not much of an internet browser type person.
No, I'm not either.
Yeah,
That's what I was wondering if there was a way. But if that sort of thing could circulate a bit like we were doing with the QR code at one stage, or we were putting the little pictures, at the very, very beginning of the Extinctionati, we put a few little things going around the net just as feelers, But that would be a good one to to put on. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on anything except Reddit. So I have no ways of sharing these things. But I was going to ask some people I know if they would maybe just for the crack, just.
Yeah, if anyone knows like certain channels they can drop memes in that can potentially make them viral, that'd
Yeah,
be
yeah.
cool.
I could
Yeah,
ask some of my granddaughters who are on all those TikToks and what you call them. I don't know the
yeah,
name of all these things. There's so
TikTok
many.
might be good, but like I have no clue. I just can't stand that
Well, that's
stuff
the
though.
thing for people with low attention span, and they have very short things, so they just completely get hits of dopamine all the time. So they're constantly on a high.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
all
that's
that
yeah.
yeah, all that digital shit that requires you to sit there and with your brain completely passive. I can't do
Yeah.
that. That just drives me nuts.
So even putting something about the flippening on something like that, it will be completely discarded straight away. There's no mystery to it. Will just be the flip. To find somebody who would like to look at what is this effect, I'm going to make a research. I don't think those sort of media would be good to put that sort of name. It would maybe better on some subs in Reddit.
I
Oh
could
yeah,
post it
true.
on. I could post it on Collapse, but
Yeah,
sadly I'm banned for life on Collapse. I'm too collapsy for.
I like
Live
it.
streaming is
There's a few
on.
other ones that I was thinking of putting it, but just dropping it there to see,
Mm.
to see people going, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah, the R collapse. I mean, I don't want to go into it too much, but those guys all seem like nihilistic, completely
Oh
nihilistic
yeah.
to me.
Apart from
Yeah.
an odd post, because I look at it now and again, and I saw a post by that guy called Douglas Rushkoff. You know, the guy who coined the term Team Human, but the guy who's written a lot about collapse and who has been actually interviewed by Nate Hagen recently. And he's an interesting guy. And he just offered questions on a post and said, and so people could interact directly with him because he's quite a known writer. So the people who were interacting with him, that was quite interesting because the conversation was getting quite deep. There was not the usual shite on collapse that there is on collapse usually. But other than that, yeah, it's not a great. It's very nihilistic, very.
It's horrifying, our collapse. Yeah.
Yeah.
But guys, we have a visitor from Brussels in Belgium. This
Yeah.
N guy. You want to say something, N?
Good evening, guys. It's Nox here. Yes, I'm just listening in now. Just getting a little gist of the group and seeing where the conversation takes us. And I'll jump in once in a while if I feel the need to give my share as well.
Nox,
Welcome.
have you ever listened to anything that we put up or videos or
Yes,
do you know?
yes.
Because, yeah.
I listen to
Okay, that's
streams.
good because otherwise, so for some people who come all of a sudden, we're using terms sometimes that people say, "What the fuck?" Like, but we're just okay. So that's fine. That's great. That's great. So we don't have to explain too much. Brilliant.
No. That's
Brilliant.
I'm pretty knowledgeable about the terms if you use a flippening and that kind of stuff. Let's just say I've been on the internet since the 90s, and I've been doing quite a fair bit of research myself.
Great.
So yeah, I'm just kind of now trying to get a little gist of how it all works here, and then I'll jump in where I feel needed.
Good. What part of Belgium are you from?
I'm close to Antwerp, actually between Brussels and Antwerp, so in the Flemish part.
Sorry?
It's in the Flemish part.
In the Flemish part. I
Yeah.
thought your accent was Flemish. All right.
Okay.
Okay. You're welcome anyway.
Thank you very much.
Well, I wanted to say that I was also really impressed by DB's graphic of the flippening. I think that, it actually helped frame the idea in a way that hadn't made as much sense to me before. So it made a lot more sense with the graphics. So thanks for that. It was really excellent. And it did kind of provoke my curiosity. I don't think there's any reason to kind of put up a poll about what's going to get advanced civilization to collapse first, except for just fun and curiosity. And it's kind of curious about how folks on the sub might think about that or feel about it. And I think it was really interesting how, DB, you mentioned that the flippening could be caused by a redistribution of weight across the crust of the Earth. That that makes a lot of sense. As the Greenland and other ice sheets melt, it changes the distribution of mass. Could kick off something like that. But I kind of viewed all of those options in my poll as being global warming related, at least. Nuclear annihilation is the kind of thing that will occur as our growth and resource and energy situation, ecosystem situation gets decimated by climate change. And
well, that's if the planes can take off, though.
Yeah, the elites are all suicidal cannibals, yeah. And then I've also wondered too the extent, because there's that video I posted of Leah Keith talking about the technosphere and how it's like 30 something trillion tons of metal and stuff, of all the civilization, basically the machine, it weighs that much. I was wondering if that weight distribution across the planet has also affected the flippening as well. I'm like, has it helped or hindered it?
That's an interesting image, Mm.
And it's curious to think, of course, it would take energy to move that stuff around, except for the climate change driven situation with ice, which is quite different. But yeah, that I just sent you a note. I'm curious, who was that author or that writer?
Oh, that was Lear Keith.
Yeah.
It's a video. I can find it and link it in there for you, but it's mostly her talking about patriarchy and stuff. But she does mention that it's like she combines like Frankenstein, patriarchy, and talks about the machine and how it's yeah. So it's actually pretty good. I'll get the video and I'll link it down there.
Thanks. But yeah, behind that poll was just
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, yeah, just behind that poll was just my general curiosity about what subjects people are think are most imminent, which is going to get there first. But who knows? I mean, they could all come at once.
Did you read the article on the flippening on the I can never pronounce that Russian name, Zanabikov effect, in that Russian magazine for women that Hugh had sent the link to? Because it's hilarious. I digged it out after DB posted that because I wanted to read it, and it is actually in a magazine with things about fashion and makeup and everything like that. It's so funny. Have you read it?
Pop Apocalypse.
No?
No,
Yeah.
I haven't. Yeah, I'd love to read that.
I'll dig it out. I have it there, so I'll try to put the link on the meeting there. I have it there. I know where it is.
I think the Zanabikov effect is actually a very good point you make there with the experiment where they did the spinning of the T handle in space, and it just goes in like an opposite rotation every few rotations. It always flips to the opposite side, and that's basically with every spinning body in 0G will have that effect. So I think that is a very valid point that could actually cause every body in space to do this opposite rotation, so the flipping again.
Yeah, I thought of exactly that experiment too. I forget what it was, but watching someone in space do the spin and watching it alternate, about every 10 seconds or so, it's just amazing.
Is that there are the various, there has been some sort of mention of whether that applied to the Earth, and then you've obviously got the typical. There was that slimy bloke who did the shampoo commercial. Oh, Veritasium. He gets on my nerves, but he did a thing. I think it was his video about the Janibekov whatever effect, and said, "Oh yeah, blah blah blah. Here's the wing nut thingy floating through space and flipping. Da da da. But don't worry, that can't happen to Earth for whatever reason." And I suppose that's sort of inevitable phenomenon that we're going to find, like with everything. Oh, don't worry, that's not going to happen here. Oh, don't worry, that's all. Don't worry, no, you misunderstood. That doesn't apply to this situation. And I'd love to hear sort of another perspective from the pro flippening. Like, are there any other pro flippening sources, I guess, aside from our own Hugh?
Well, it would be interesting if, because yeah, I mean, this is from Hugh as well, but he mentioned that, like, I think what planet is, like, Venus is like rotating the opposite way of Earth, and he was talking about how probably the Venus had a flippening, and that's probably why it turned into basically hell. Its climate went haywire, and it just, yeah. And I'm wondering, like, how could you determine if a planet flipped in the past, or um, yeah. Because
Yeah, again, it's this.
there's other planets too that are flipped. Like which one is on its side? Is it Uranus is on
Venus.
its
It's
side?
Venus that goes the
Or
other way, isn't it?
yeah, Venus is like rotating rotating the opposite way of Earth. And then there's a one of the planets is like on its side. And I'm wondering, like, if those other planets have flipped.
Yeah, is there anyone though who's brought this subject up though anywhere else in the known universe, or is it entirely
Yeah, but you know that's not a.
idiosyncratic?
But you see, these type of thinking, saying, "Well, yeah, but it's a wacky thing in a corner, and we're not going to really. It's not in the serious." Well, all that is just how do you say? It makes me even more. It interests me even more, and I'm not. I mean, I'm usually not the type that I don't like these kind of things, but I'm not a physicist, and so I've just got a limited knowledge of science. But I've got it has, because I don't know if you remember, for a while we had discussed that, and we were saying that the flippening concept was also a metaphor, and it was not just what we were talking about, and it served two purposes in our sort of reflections. And
Oh, yeah, but surely the plausibility of it as an actual thing, it strengthens the deliciousness.
exactly, it's plausible. It's not. It's
Is
not.
it plausible?
It's plausible to associate the Earth as that sort of, what do you call it, that bolt,
As a wing nut?
the wing nut that's oscillating, that's turning and then that flips, because of the Earth is not a perfect sphere, and it's got different bumps and lumps, so it's not totally round. Now, if there was a physicist here who could confirm what I'm saying, but it looks like those sort of asymmetrical things, if an unbalance happens in terms of mass, and like for the wing nuts, they gave a little push to it. It started to flip the other way after a while. I don't know.
Yeah,
One thing,
would be nice.
One
Sorry.
thing I think
Can
is.
I jump in?
Oh, no worries. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mick here. Yeah, because I was listening to you online, and I just said I'd join in. But about the flippening thing, there was another source about it, and I actually sent it to who I thought was DB by email, but I don't know, did DB get that email from me? But his name is a Mario Build Reps guy.
Oh, I got the email. I haven't looked at it yet.
Oh, no worries.
I was gonna do that today though, but
Yeah, no
yeah,
problem. But
go ahead.
yeah, so basically, he shows that over the last 150,000 years, approximately, there has been a number of different positions of the geographic North Pole between different places in Greenland, even slightly south of Greenland, and back to its current position today, in the middle of the Arctic Ocean. So just look, I'm an engineer, but I'm not an expert on this topic. But basically, you can imagine it like this, right? You've got a lot of ice in Greenland, which is a bit anomalous, that it seems to have been left there after the last ice age, right? And if a lot of that ice melts, you're taking away weight that's near the equator at the moment, because I don't know, did any of you ever spin buckets of water that has no lid over your head when you were young? The water stays in the bucket when you spin it around. Does anyone else do that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, good. So, but basically, imagine this, that the ice on Greenland, quite a lot of it melted, right? So you're actually taking away water from, say, or you're taking away weight that's near the equator. Okay, so that in terms of just Greenland, there's less mass, so it's going to move away from the equator. So that's why the North Pole would be sticking out of Greenland, because there's less weight in Greenland because a lot of the ice is melted. So it would mean that the North Pole or Greenland would move towards the North Pole. Have people understood what I said?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, that's the kind of mechanism to do with the.
Yes, yeah.
And one thing about this, it seems like if there's an archaeological record that this is kind of regular, but these kind of shifts in weight distribution may hasten it, right? And that's the real concern. Things that were, I tend to think of things like, earthquakes, just being as something that I don't think that I'm playing a personal role in creating generally. And so I tend not to worry about them except just to prepare for their consequences. And I always kind of viewed the flippening as this sort of thing. But, I think DB's graphic helped me re-understand it a little differently, in that it is something that we might contribute to and hasten, even if it happens on kind of a natural cycle. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about this is, the Earth has an iron core spinning independently, which creates our ionosphere. But the crust can move independently of that. And so, if we were to change the weight distribution about the Earth, it's like the ice over Greenland is such a tiny fraction. But that's not really the concern here. The ice over Greenland changing would only have to impact the spin of the Earth's crust alone. So the weight that we're talking about is actually much smaller, and it could be more sensitive than I would have first thought. And so I think that that's really fascinating. If we experience a flippening, we may still get protection from solar wind and, radiation from the sun, but, Mexico could be on the North Pole and things could just go crazy. All crops would fail everywhere for the period of adjustment, and it would be quite a disaster. And it would be potentially, if this is all right, caused in part by global warming redistributing the weight about the crust. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah. Bob asked, according to Lord Hughes' book, which was St. George and the Median Dragon, is plausible. And actually, I had a few email exchanges with him, not many, because he was a funny character to deal with by email. Sometimes he was very friendly, sometimes not. But basically, he's replied to me because I asked the same question: was it just was he using it as a psychological trick for people to flip out of their current state of mind into to get out of their alien cortex state of mind? And he more or less confirmed to me that it was both. That he was using it as for psychological flipping, but it was potentially plausible.
Yeah, I think it's like the flippening will cause the psychological flip, or flipping the psychology will cause the flippening, if you know what I mean. Either way.
No, I think he was more aiming towards people getting enlightened and some way of, resolving this. Not to be hopeful, but just to be optimistic, rather than it going all the way to the geographical portrait. But he seemed to say by the email, and I've read his book, that it's plausible, and it seems to be from the history and the email I sent you, DB, that if they look at the alignment of the various ancient megalithic monuments around the world, that there's been about 5 different locations of the North Pole.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then also, I think the flippening is a pretty good memento mori because no one can do anything about that. But you can also probably imagine the resistance to the idea is pretty fierce because, civilization is all about denial of death. oh, I'm not gonna die. I'm gonna live forever somehow. And it's like, no. And I feel like if we actually value, like if most people actually valued every second of their life, we wouldn't do wage slavery like at all. We would just say like, fuck you, I'm gonna go, be with my family or do what I want to actually do with my life.
And do nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Do nothing, sit in the shade. Yeah, but imagine that Americans are just like, oh, get a job, you bum. Almost all the Americans I know are like that. In America, we love our wage slavery so much.
Yeah, it's incredible. It makes me think a lot about Guy Debord, who I've been looking into quite a bit recently. But yeah, this is right up your post, Sophie, about enjoying life instead of buying into this myth of, slavery ethics and slavery work.
Yeah, it's like that post on the idleness of hunter gatherers, that was awesome. It's like, dude, I would just love to sit around all day and watch animals. That would be my freaking jam. That would be freaking amazing.
Yeah, it's almost like we evolved for that, like we're meant to be that way or something.
Of course we are.
Yep. I just watched this great documentary 2 nights ago. I think it was called The Last Forest. Has anyone seen this? It follows the Yanomami people in the Amazon. Well, I don't know if anyone has seen it, but it's worth a look. I read Napoleon Chagnon's ethnographic studies of Yanomami cultures long ago. But man, the documentary was fascinating. And just to say it, the people seem pretty damn happy.
You should post that if you have the link to it. You should post it down in the chat so people can watch it later. That'd be great.
Yeah, let me find it. I'll do that.
That's a good one going south.
Yeah, that one has an asterisk though.
Is
You
that
gotta
because
count.
it was International Man's Day? This it could happen.
Got to place your bet on the,
Tosh,
Hebrew God.
you put the image back now on.
But yeah, it's just like, everything is just, the train is like going faster towards that brick wall. It feels like whatever that brick wall is, it can be one thing, it can be all the things. Yeah, it's getting pretty crazy.
Yeah, my only curiosity about that is whether the humans will sort of cling to the denial all the way to the end, whether that really happens or not. I'm sort of curious.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on where you are and in a way, how privileged, because like I talked to somebody recently who I know, and they basically really don't care about anything outside of their own pleasure. So hedonism is pretty common, and yeah, like I'm not sure those people probably don't have those people probably have a sticky end when things hit the fan, because I guess hedonism is great until the drugs run out, and then what do you do? Yeah, I've never liked hedonism, mostly because it's dependent on drugs.
Yeah, and I was watching something recently. I think that this planet is big enough, and there are enough people. We're going to see all sorts of different scenarios, people reacting in all sorts of different ways. But I think studying the millennial death cults and kind of what cults do when they predict, a major shift or a demise is really instructive. And certainly, I think where there's energy and propaganda, you know, probably in the US, they're going to keep it up as long as there's anything to keep up.
You know, I
But
think you're right about that. I kind of see the whole you know, some of the Democrats are trying to do all we're going to go back to the progressive ways. I think that's a crisis cult. And then you have the conservatives doing the whole make America great again. It's like I think that's a crisis cult because it's like they're it's a short term, probably even delusional idea that you know America was quote unquote great because if you looked at the big picture, all America is basically Rome with machines and nukes, and all the things that we think are good with the goodies in the stores and the technology. It's like all that stuff is so fucking destructive. It's none of it's good. I'm sorry, guys. It's not. It's not good. The sugar cubes is not worth the fucking destruction to the planet, the genocides, the oppression. It's not worth it.
yeah, but as long as that happens to someone else, you know, you're golden.
Yeah, that's the zero sum game
Yeah.
stuff that commerce causes. Yeah, the zero sum game.
Yeah, I feel like I fully agree with all that. And, you know, my sense is, you know, when America begins its decline in earnest, when we can no longer project power overseas and we get through whatever kind of civil wars and infighting we're going to have here, if that's not too catastrophic, you know, that it doesn't take everyone else with it, um, I kind of do hold some hope that maybe you know, their ability to control things will recede just a bit, and there might be a few places around the edges where people can live better if there's anything left at all. But you know, I don't really have much hope for that. But you know, as empire recedes, then you know there will be pockets that perhaps can survive.
Yeah, the trick is in America though is during the collapse as the society. Well, I don't even want to call it society. It's not as the prison falls apart.
Yeah,
The trick is dodging all the insane people that'll try to kill you.
yeah,
That's
that's
gonna be the tough part because as far as I've seen around me, no one is fucking sane here.
yeah,
I don't
nigh
even know if I'm
impossible in North
sane. Like
America.
yeah, it's like I don't even know if I'm sane. It's like I always question that. It's like, am I this? It's like, no, we're just gonna, you know, not settle on an idea and just keep going and, you know, kind of trusting my animal nature to, you know, inform
But
me
have you,
about, you know, what the right path is.
But you see, that's working on ego. It's working. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of part of this work too, isn't it? Um, letting go of your identity and your belonging to this or that, and all these sort
Yeah,
of
I
personality traps, and your survival depends on that, but in many ways.
yeah, I had a thought the other day about that. It's like, if you stop at an idea, that is kind of committing suicide in a way, like intellectual suicide, like settling on one idea and just sticking with it. So it's like, yeah, and I'm completely resistant to that at all. I haven't settled on any ideas entirely. I kind of have an assortment of things I like, but like if they turn out to be wrong, then that's fine. Like I'm not gonna have an existential crisis over it. It's like,
Yeah,
well, that was fun while it lasted. Bye.
but you're not going to be
so not
attached
to
to
be,
it. You're not going to be attached to it because you're not going to. It doesn't matter really at the end of the day. You know.
yeah, but can I ask an argumentative question? Are you not attached to doomerism? You know, sometimes
Yeah.
what I hear here is a bit fatalistic. I mean, okay, the
Well,
planet's gonna go down, but our industrial civilization is gonna go down, but
No, it's
well,
really good to question that. It's really
well.
good to question that
Yeah.
because it's just part of the whole thing. It's part of the same game. Of course, it's a
Yeah.
name. It's just a name.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Mm.
The fatalism is healthy depending on how you approach it. If it's like completely nihilistic, down in the dumps, oh nothing matters, f this, life sucks, then yeah, that's bad. But if it's fatalism where you basically soberly admit you have no control over anything and that taking control fucks everything up, that's good because that's true. Civilization is humanity's attempt to assert control, and it's created a situation where things are pretty much psychologically shit for almost everybody.
Yeah, and I think that the question that you asked, Mick, is that it's a live one on our collapse. For example, we were talking about that subreddit just a moment ago, and I think that people are raised in this dominant in the U.S. are raised under the propaganda and dominant paradigm, and then if they start to worry about the direction of the system, and then they learn physics or engineering and actually see where it's going and see that at some point it's bound for an energy diet, and other problems, then how do they assert themselves in that way? It's they're fighting against the paradigm, against the dominant story, and that fight to bring that fight every day creates these kind of egoic slings and arrows and like pushback. And I think I was in that place for a very long time where I felt like just anybody listen to how bad the environment is and let's not stop killing all the whales. And I think that is very egoic attachment to these outcomes. But I feel like more recently, as I've really fully embraced it and kind of let go of, even doomerism as being all that important. The value of my day-to-day life and every minute just rushes in and is so much bigger than it used to be. So I think it's a really fun conversation, doomerism. But more and more, I don't really. I'd happily be wrong. Not as attached to it.
Yeah, you don't, because I'm spending time scrolling through Art Collapse and reading about how all the shit's falling apart. That's not even good anyway. That's kind of a drug itself, right? All right, that's kind of like
Yeah.
a bad drug where you kind of get addicted to sadness.
Yeah, but
It's like I don't do that.
It's interesting to, you see, under the banner Doomer, you've got an enormous array of different people, and it's not a set of rules and conclusions. It's just an umbrella, really, for lots of different things. So, I mean, we can talk. What your question, Mike, is about, a fatalistic tone in the between us, and yeah, but fates are fates, and our fate is our fate. But I don't think we are sad doomers. I think actually you could say happy doomers in a way. And it's just a word. What do you? How do you see a doom? What do you give a doomer a particular type, or do you see like me that there's a total array of different people there?
I agree with you. Maybe going so wants to chime in, but
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
You want to say something going so? Yeah.
Okay, I saw the DGR, the Deep Green Resistance webcast last night, and I don't consider myself a doomer actually, and when I saw this 2-hour web stream from DGR, it struck me that both they and we in this group, we have kind of moved on to beyond collapse, if you understand. So they are, those guys are hopeful for the return to the uncivilized, to the natural world, and I think at least some in this group are also hopeful. So we have kind of come through doomerism and to a larger outlook, I think, where we're not just reading and doom scrolling and seeing how bad it is. I think they've kind of talked us together through it to the beyond collapse, maybe beyond doom. I don't know, but I think we have to distinguish different things, and like I would be absolutely sure that civilization is doomed, but that doesn't mean that humans are doomed or that the planet is doomed, right? There's a lot of different things here, and I think Guy McPherson made a huge mistake by equating by saying that that the collapse of civilization is the same as human extinction. I don't think that at all. I think that is just a
Yeah.
very large claim to make. I think, and I think it only means that it hasn't really thought about it as much.
Going south, can you give us just a brief summary of the outcomes of that DGR? Because I'm not sure all of us
So
attended it. I wasn't there myself.
you should basically just watch it. It's archived and you can find it. I can post a link on the subreddit afterwards. It's
Okay, thanks.
Derek Jensen is a philosopher, so every time he appears, he has some kind of new thoughts and stuff. So I don't. It was very late in the night, so I don't remember things in detail. But it's interesting. Yeah. If you have to prioritize your time, you should just watch the second half of it. Right.
Yeah, it's on YouTube now. I'll post the link.
One thing you make me think of going south with what you said, and you know how it relates to this is just
Founding myth also condemns.
you know, I think for me a lot of it's been overcoming this kind of really clever Stockholm syndrome that the story of civilization kind of instills, and kind of understanding that we're not this thing that we're taught to identify with and is killing the whole planet.
But you have to kill the beast.
It's a journey.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, I haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg of all the books that have been written about how the system totally psychologically like fucking ruins human beings to turn them into slaves. Like, I do think that Darren Stevenson guy like sums it up in a pretty good way. He says basically what they do throughout the inculcation process is they just amputate you completely. They amputate everything off that makes you human, and then chucks you into the meat grinder.
So, DB, how do you become more human?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm still figuring that out because I'm still in the cage too, right? So, yeah, I'm not sure. But I think getting over all the cultural junk and delusions is a good first step. But outside of that, I'm not entirely sure because yeah, I'm still stuck in the cage too, and I probably still have some delusions.
Well, maybe just to chime in here, if we stop treating money as a religion, that might be a step towards the solution, because inherently all of this is rooted out of the money system. Um, so there is a big thing where basically the people who rule, let's just call them like that, they have sort of like a control mechanism in place, and that is completely built on that monetary system. There is solutions where people came up with things like, let's say, Bitcoin now, what was created in 2008. People are still on the fence if it's a good thing or a bad thing, if it's like created by DARPA even. Still, at the end of the day, it is an alternative to the monetary fiasco system that we have right now. Like the fiat system is basically built on debt, because that's the only thing that can keep it alive. That is debt upon more debt upon more debt, and that is also where we basically see our life being controlled from that aspect completely. So if there is other solutions to that, that would be the first step out of that cage, like you just named it. At least that is my opinion.
I really like what you said there, Knox. I think it reminds me of a video that Hugh did that focused in on, mammals have, apes anyway, have this psychological trick where if we're indebted to another member of our tribe, it's a vital importance that we get even and do well. And of course, this monetary system takes advantage of that primarily to kind of, put the harness on us and saddle us up to the system. So I forget which video that was from Hugh, but I think that that's really key. And yeah, I would just say, to Mick's question too, I mean, there's so many ways you could try to kind of become more real, but I think clearing out all of the inputs that
But that's
this
where what you're saying is exactly that's where the emissary becomes the master, because
Yeah.
what we the image of the alien cortex that we have used in the past is clever enough to understand these drives in our human instincts and to canalize them, like it's been shown in all the videos we've watched by Adam Curtis and etc. Because it's based on human behavior and human lower layers of brain that I don't think are lower at all in hierarchy, but in evolution, older. And I think that you were talking about we had a lot of meetings about the caged chimp, I remember, and that we are the caged chimp. And the first thing we need to do if we want to destroy the cage is first to get in touch as humans with our inner chimp. Because I mean, we have those innate, like the thing you described, Confed, about the death. But that's in humans too. In primitive, or not, I hate that word too, but in indigenous, normal tribes, there's no system of money. There's a system of service rendered, and I owe you. And you've done that for me, and that is extremely strong, and that's what binds communities. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've done is all the stuff that I enjoy is actually oriented away from the money economy. So I don't require to do economic things for my enjoyment. So, like the art stuff I bought that stuff years ago, like probably 10 years ago, and I still have it. And it's not much, but I don't need much. So, um, yeah, I spend most of my time painting and writing poetry. So, as corny as that is, but I have limits of what I can do because I'm a wage slave, right? Like everyone else. So, um, and the closest nature area, since I live in a city, is a park, and I go there too and chill out. But I really do wish, we could get a world without fences and borders and stuff because, we're trapped. You see all these fences and shit everywhere and border lines, and you realize you're caged. And another thing is like the what do you call it? The passport system is completely class based. Like if you get a passport and you want to move to a different country and you're a wage slave, good luck. Yeah.
but
DP,
it's the same for me, yeah. And I keep away from it as much as I can, and I manage pretty well now. So even at my age, and I don't work, I get a tiny little thing from the state to live, and I'm crafty, and I manage very well with exchange. Neighbors doing something for me, and I do them a favor, and exchanging things that I grow and stuff like that. So I can live on a tiny, tiny bit of money, and I'm aiming to. I wish I could just do without it, but as you say, we're all in the cage one way or another. But I spend
DB, have
my
you
time
heard,
outside and in nature, and just looking at things that are nice, and I don't need any money for that. I can do everything I love doesn't involve money anyway. Nothing.
it's a good point. DB, have you heard of the phrase of quiet quitting? Where people are, because of teleworking as well, people are doing a lot less.
Yeah. Well,
They
I
still
haven't heard of
work and get paid.
yeah, I haven't heard of that phrase, but yeah, I've tried to do as little work for the system as possible. I mean, I only work a part-time job right now, thank God. But I don't know if that'll go on into the future. I hope it will, and maybe I can work even less as the system starts falling apart. But yeah, like yeah, I don't like wage slavery at all. And to me, that's what civilization is all about, is wage slavery. So, when the system goes, I'm gonna be fucking having a party. Like if it collapses, I'll be celebrating. I'll try to get everyone to do a block party or something.
But I think, just to chime in again, like a majority of people are still not independent these days. Like, if you want to get like definitely money independent, like get away from the money system, it means you need to be energy independent, food independent, all these things. Like, and that is something you can work on today. Actually, like I've been advising many people to start taking up hydroponics, like gardening in water. It's a simple way of doing things, and it basically gives you a certain amount of independence in your own food production, and that is so important, where most of the people are not like busy with these kind of things, and they will, once let's just say something really bad happens, they will be at a point where they all have to learn that at that point, and many won't be able to even, so it's always good if you start getting independent in certain regions where you know I need those things to basically survive, when things go south, you know.
Yeah, I think that's vitally important. It's so valuable to, I don't have any illusions that my gardening is going to protect me through all the calories I need when civilization falls away, but it's a step in the right direction. And, what Mick asked earlier, how do you become more human? How do you reconnect with your animal? I mean, we are an extension of the soils we rely on. We're an extension of the ecosystems that we depend on. And so recreating those connections, indigenous people, walk through their landscape in full command of its product and its dynamics. And so kind of getting close to the ground again, growing food, paying attention to wilderness areas, and being in tune with the seasons is really important for feeling human again.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, all of that is also basically getting our intelligence back too, because ultimately, our intelligence is an extension of the planet, and the planet's an extension of the universe. It's yeah, and then being tied in with the machines, it's done great damage to our intelligence.
Yeah, it's very warped. And that's one thing I was going to say also. I think Mick's great question about how we kind of become more human and reconnect. One thing that I've just found really valuable is to take a break from all the propagandistic inputs of society. Like, just for a minute, just stop watching news, stop looking at the internet, kind of, allow your mind to clear, think about the thoughts and concepts that kind of intrude and come in. Are they real? Are they from civilization? Just kind of clean out the inputs for a minute and see what comes out, see what emerges. And I just found a lot more reconnection with the leaves and the light and the grass and such.
Yeah, absolutely. Those mediations serve to disconnect us from everything that actually matters with our lives. And what you said too about the propaganda reminds me of I can't remember, the YouTube video that I saw, but it was this anthropologist talking about the San Bushman, and she said she had a radio with her, and one of the women pointed at the radio when it went off, and she said it was a devil in a box, and it's like, I bet she has no idea how right she was.
And another thing I think is that we need to do physical things for this. It's not just a process of either meditation or other type of exercise. I think there is physical things that are very basic. For example, getting cold, getting hungry, having pain in your muscles, having to do something to carry something very heavy, being dirty. All these things. They're just so simple. But I mean, when I was a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I kind of made my kids do that a bit, and going in the cold water in the winter and stuff like that, and just going for a day without much food, or this machine is also softening us with this kind of, but you can die nice and slowly in your little box, but it will be comfortable. That is also a lure that you have to be very careful of. And the contact with the elements, being outdoors, or even if you're in a city, even if and especially if it's lashing rain and nobody's out, or if it's a storm, or if it's cold, and that you don't have your nice little fireplace and your nice little television or whatever you do at home. I think you want to see more people outside, much more.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It also, yeah, that kind of also reminds me of like Nietzsche's sentiment of the last man. How they'll just want to be in a stagnant nest of comforts with no resistance or challenge whatsoever. And
Yeah,
then like trees, they get hard bark because of stress wood, like with the wind blowing on them from side to side. So if people don't get out and test their metal, so to speak, you will get way too soft to do anything. And I can't imagine, being, so um having such a resistance to doing things outside and challenging yourself to be better that yeah, I just can't imagine not doing that. It's just
yeah,
completely alien
and,
to me.
and people don't realize that it's by doing it that they become resilient and they become strong. It's just by doing that, and it's so simple.
It's a catch-22.
Why?
If you're soft, then being outside and training your resilience is just miserable.
That's just your mind. That's your mind telling you that. Experience it.
Well, the thing is, my experiences of it, by and large, have put me off.
Because I know, because you hate cold, but
Cold and whatever, yeah. But even in the heat, though, I can't pretend that I've gone all outdoorsy and stuff.
you
So I
won't
mean,
have
that's
the choice. You won't have the choice when everything goes to fuck.
well, no, exactly.
My
And at that point, I'll deal with it. At that point,
Well, I'm not.
that's why I'm looking forward to it fatalistically.
I'm not. I mean, I don't want to say I'm outdoorsy, but I don't have a car. I ride my bike, so if it's freezing cold outside, like if it's below freezing in a blizzard, tough shit, I have to go out ride my bike. If it's 100 degrees, tough shit, I have to ride my bike to get to where I need to go.
But
Yeah.
but I think Knox had made a good point that there's the danger of waiting for everything to collapse. That everyone needs to upskill at the same time, and there's not enough resources. If they're doing hydroponics or whatever. So
Yeah, the centralization of resources. I mean, it depend. I mean, a lot of that also depends on the stranglehold the authorities will have, the rulers will have when the system starts falling apart, because they'll just, if they have to, they'll just send the army to your house and steal your garden. Like if they know that's what's going on, if they are a power center nearby that can has the resources to do that, they will. They don't want, like, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I suspect that their psychology is so fucked up and so yeah, so fucked up and spiteful that if they see a group of people getting on without them that's within their reach, they'll try to put a stop to that.
Just ask the Native Americans.
Yeah, exactly, and don't put that past America. They'll fucking do it again.
Yeah.
They haven't changed a damn bit.
Certainly, they'd prefer killing you and taking your food as opposed to starving. So,
Well,
so I don't think any of us should be trying to create any real serious survival strategies and put all of our hope behind it. But, a little something couldn't hurt.
If you're
So,
far away enough,
independence.
probably. If you're far away enough from a city, probably. If you're far away enough from like a power center, then you can probably get a community together to do maybe some pastoralism as a probably not a main survival strategy, but like part of it, part of the whole, a way to try and survive the collapse.
but you're all talking about when it collapses, but it can be actually sooner that you need those things. Just as an example, we see now over here in Europe, where we have the big farmer protest that was a few months ago with the Dutch farmers, where they're actually trying to reduce a lot of production on a food scale. Which will by itself already cause a food shortage, and it won't give a total collapse. It will be more like a controlled collapse. Like we're all now basically in the apocalyptic scenarios here, but like if you do a control collapse, then you do not get these apocalyptic scenarios, and you basically keep control on the whole breakdown, and you just take more and more control, whoever they are, of course.
Yeah, that's true. So those farmers are getting together and doing solidarity.
Well, it's actually because of a green, like basically they want to protect certain green zones. But the thing is, they created so many green zones that now farmers are basically smack in the middle of these green zones, which means they have to reduce their nitrogen production by 85%, some of them, which means they basically cannot sustain their farms anymore, which is not a bad thing by itself, but it's like basically what they're doing now is they're like putting in a measure, and they don't have any alternative setup. So that will basically just cause a cold turkey, basically, where we will have a big food shortage just in like a very small amount of time. And it will feel like it's collapsing. There will still be a minimum amount for everybody, and it's going to be something different. So basically, the Dutch farmers now said like we don't want to participate in these new laws, and that's why they all went protesting, basically.
Knox, I fully agree with you. I mean, I don't agree that the collapse is this apocalyptic event. I mean, there are some tail risks, but there is a kind of a controlled letdown by national governments, as we can see.
Yeah.
Initially by the one in the Netherlands, and I agree with you to kind of prepare in terms of having some place that you can grow stuff. That's my aim for the spring of next year. But I mean, that's not available to everyone either. So,
Well, and that's why I advise the hydroponics, because that is something basically everyone can do. Even like if you just have a small place, you can do that. But above all, if you have a garden, like do soil. Please do soil, because it's like it was said before, where you being in contact and getting dirty and really being busy outside, it has this awesome effect on your well-being, actually. So that's definitely if you can do that, but I know that there is a lot of people who don't have the ability to basically do that. But like with hydroponics, you can just on a square meter or square foot, you can basically grow pretty sustainable amount, and that's by itself well, basically already something, it gives you a little bit of independence. Will that be a complete meal to get you going, like 3 meals a day? No, definitely not, but you will have some nutrition, or you will have something at least to barter with. Like another advice is at least get seeds. If you don't want to get into the gardening, but get those seeds, because they will be harder and harder to come by, and at least make sure you get the heirloom seeds, not the GMO seeds. So there is a bunch you need to learn before that moment really comes, and that's where people basically need to go now and start seeing what are the possible avenues to get some independence, and be self-sustainable.
And this is a very interesting topic for me. I mean, in part, I wonder if there may be another area of things we can do for those of us who are just not inclined. I can't seem to incline myself as much as I understand the logic of what you're saying. I can't do it. I can't do soil. Or no, I don't know if I can or can't, but there's we're sort of, well, I find myself again as the sort of urbanite. I'm stuck in this mental place where I can see all this stuff happening and the deterioration of civilization, but the motivation without an actual material crisis is something I find very hard to garner. So that's the thing. I feel like I'm so disconnected from any like olden days activities, and to to be more or less like zero motivated or interested in those things in any sort of tangible sense. So intellectually, I think, oh yeah, it's really great. Everybody should grow their own food. But when it comes to like going and poking around in the garden to see what's happening with potatoes, it's yeah. I just how do you get yourself interested in that without actually having the crisis of or whatever it is in your face? So I don't know about my comrades here, but most of the stuff I do is very technologically orientated, and I'm sort of used to computers and gadgets and stuff. And just like growing plants, again, my other half is very into gardening and stuff like that, and I really want to be interested in that, or weaving cloth or something,
Yeah, but I
how
think
do you
it's
get
an
interested?
interesting. I think you make an interesting point. Like you're urban, your technology. Like for me, for instance, like I'm soil, but I also do a lot on hydro. And basically, I came up with a complete automated hydro system, and I built that out of. I started off with an Arduino, basically. Then I went on to a D1 Wemos little control board, added pumps to it, wrote a little software for it, and so on and so on. And basically, I now have graphs showing me my water temperature at a constant. I have my flow of water, my amount of nutrients that are in my water, all automated basically, and I can see that on my cell phone wherever I want. And that's basically the fun technology part that you can kind of get into that. And then the growing by itself comes like a secondary, it's basically start with the things you like, start with the fun things about it, and don't see it as just poking a hole in the ground and putting a plant in there. Like it's the way you approach these things that kind of is going to make the difference at the end, I think.
Sorry, Knox, I'm the complete opposite to you. The thought of the technology bit to me is I want to get away from that.
Well, and
Seeing the plant grow through the year, and appreciating its taste, if it's a vegetable or fruit, or seeing the leaves go on a young tree. Because I planted like 90 oak trees at the start of this year, or sorry, ash trees, and a couple of oak trees. But so
Um, I mean, getting seeds that are not, GMO, probably in the back. The only place I could probably try to do a garden is my backyard, but there's one problem with that, and that my backyard is surrounded by the trees of neighbors. So I'm not sure if the garden will get enough sunlight. So that's a problem outside of my control with that. I could probably give it a shot, and see if anything will grow. Try to plant in the little areas where there is sun. But yeah, they won't. I don't think where I live they'll allow me to do a freaking garden in the front yard, though. They might actually
Yeah, but you have
throw a
to
huge.
associate with people who can do it, and you can do something else. You see, everybody. I was writing in the comments there. We can't all be gardeners. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
the world is not made that way. Even in hunter gatherers. I mean, I'm sure people had different roles. They were not all doing the same. There was some who were more talented for this or that. There was one who was probably looking after I don't know. But if you imagine if everybody was the gardener, what will you do then? Who would look after the hens or the carpentry or building a house? Like, you need all sorts of different
yeah.
skills. Like,
That what I probably could do is just try to see if I can afford to get some seeds like every month. Like go to the store and get some seeds after I take care of all my other bills and food. Is like just start gathering packets of seeds of plants that will grow here. And then if I find anyone nearby that's interested in gardening, I can just hook them up with everything they need instantly. Seed wise, that is.
yeah, that's a good idea for the seeds, but you have to learn how to preserve them and where to get them. Can talk about that one day if you like, because I've been looking at seeds for a long, long time now, about 30 years, so I know quite a bit about them.
Yeah, that'd be good. We could probably exchange information on the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do that.
Yeah, I love all these. I mean, you know, I'm such a big fan of soil gardening, but there's any number of ways that you can connect and be useful and try again to become more fully human, instead of what this thing makes us. And I think you're right, Knox. It's all about just kind of pursuing your interest. Just find the thing that you're interested in, as long as it connects into the natural world around you or the people directly around you, being useful to the people around you or being part of a community you can rely on. I think these are great things for people who don't necessarily garden. Um, but, maybe give it a shot. And then DB, I was just thinking, maybe you're familiar with the concept of guerrilla gardening. I have some friends here who have, attempted to plant out every parking strip and forested area, anywhere they can find a place to put food, they do. It's pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
it'd be
Not their
really
land
great.
even.
Yeah, it'd be really great is just rip up all these fucking golf courses and make community gardens out of those. Because golf sucks. Fuck golf.
Yeah. I mean, golf could be fun, but I think food is more fun if you don't have enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, the only thing you gotta find the spots the grounds crews overlook, and then put some kale or something in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I'm just, Knox, I'm just curious. I've kind of looked at hydroponics in the past, and I'm curious how you think about its energy supply, its energy security, or I don't know. In Brussels, probably the renewables. It's probably a more energy secure location than a lot of places. But how reliant is your hydro on electricity?
Well, basically, I can power my entire hydro from solar panels. And I could do it also from wind energy. But then, of course, with a battery source, because I need to store that power. So basically, on that matter, it's even doable up in the northern hemisphere. Doing it on a large scale, like on a let's say on a scale where you would feed a whole nation with it, I think it's going to be very expensive basically to do it over here. We're dealing with these high energy prices now as well. If you would do it off the net, and it would cost you basically an arm and a leg at this point. So yeah, it's not the best solution as to from the energy source. If you would do it on a large scale, if you can just basically do it for yourself and you can run it off a few solar panels, yeah, you're good. So yeah, let's just put it this way. If you can do so, do so. That's my best advice here.
Yeah, I love the idea. I've kind of thought about it, toyed with it, but yeah,
Is it more an
using soil
urban
so
thing?
far.
Is it more an urban thing you're saying? Or because hydroponics don't make any sense outside the city anyway, don't they?
No, if you have enough land, then it doesn't make sense, in my opinion. Then you just gotta learn that you don't cannot plant everything on the same spot every year. You need to work with these plots that you leave just like a year without anything on it, with a bunch of nutritions, and that's basically you gotta learn that soil if you're living out of the city. But basically, here where I live, Belgium is like we have gardens, but they're not really that big, so. I cannot plant that much, and that's why I also started experimenting with hydro basically. And to be honest, the results I get from hydro, they are astonishing. I can say they easily give more than 150% of the same. So let's say if I grow a tomato on hydro or I grow a tomato outside, the hydro one will always be bigger and will always be more bigger actually, just in volume.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. I remember hydroponics from the time when I was a student, but they were growing other plants in hydroponics, the type that you smoke. So I've seen that, but I've never seen it for food really. I've heard about it, but because I live in the country, but I think also it's important for people who live in wild places to learn how also not to forage, to eat things that they wouldn't think that they could eat. Now, you can actually do it also in cities because you can plant some cabbages in the places where they put flowers and stuff like that. I know some people do it, but to come back to foraging, there's an immense amount of stuff that you can live on and survive on it in case everything really goes ape shit for a while. I don't know, is it worth it? But
Oh,
tree bark and and
it'd be
Hmm?
there's green belts around where I live, where ducks like to flock. I could probably learn how to fletch a bow and freaking go duck hunting. No one would be able to tell because there's no gunshot. Just get a duck, stick it in my backpack, and just get the hell out of there quickly.
yeah.
Yeah, Mike Pollan had that omnivore's dilemma. He talked about a guy in Boston just running down the Charles River and grabbing a goose.
Yep, it's cheaper than going to the store.
Well, not many people would do it. Not many people would think of doing it anyway. Like, around here, I'm the only one that goes to hunt rabbits. There's nobody doing it. Maybe one or two guys sometimes, and there's loads of them, but it's just, they're there, like, but the people are just, they go to the supermarket. There's blackberries growing here everywhere in the autumn for August, September, and sometimes into October. And people go and buy them in the supermarket and they're free on the road. No.
Yeah, could I just chime in there and like everything we're talking about is kind of like to avoid the zombie apocalypse for ourselves, right? To be able to survive it. Like, just back to a question that Inish Man made earlier about this controlled collapse. I don't know, was it through the war or what was it? But basically that that we're getting less resources to do less things, so there's less emissions. I mean, is there any sense from people that they're doing it because they know of the major tail risk to the world, and that's why what they're doing in the Netherlands, they're doing that, that the Nord Stream pipeline gas is no longer flowing in it, that type of thing? Does anyone have an opinion there?
I think you got a game of brinksmanship as part of the problem. I think that personally, my best estimate, of course, unless you're one of the global elite who could say for sure, but personally, my best estimate is that they see the bottleneck coming. And what they're trying to do is guide themselves into kind of a soft landing or advantageous situation against each other. So it creates this game of brinksmanship, like where they're trying to race to kind of get set up so the elite can protect themselves while also watching out for the others. And that's the trick. That's what kind of creates the jockeying for position as you see the dark clouds coming. And so I think that it really varies a lot depending on where you're at. I think in the US, I bet the elite are kind of hoping that we just shoot ourselves to hell. And then they have a pretty large continent with pretty good resources to inherit, with their current systems of control, projecting power wherever they like. I think Europe is between a rock and a hard place, with not a lot of onshore economy and what's going on with energy. I think Russia's in a great position, but it's all kind of this game of brinksmanship that's very detailed depending on your locale. But yeah, I think generally they're trying to position for survival. The elite are.
Okay, but isn't that kind of contradicting your earlier thing about this big risk of nuclear war? Because they want to be in a good position, so surely they want to avoid that.
Yeah, I think they are trying to avoid it. Yeah, it's my best sense they are trying to avoid it. But if you look at like Putin's regime, and he's not in this place yet, so they don't have to launch the nukes yet, right? But if the U.S. pushes him into a position where it's either, total domination by the U.S. and he's done, he's ended, they'll kill him and everyone in the regime, then his only alternative for survival might be to launch the nukes. So that's what I mean by the brinksmanship.
But
So I
it
think
looks
what they're
more.
trying to do is squeeze Russia, for what they can without, just short of launching nukes.
But it sounds to me that actually what you're saying makes sense, but the brinksmanship is actually a cover between the elites to basically screw the little guy. So the elites will survive. In the end, there'll be no nuclear war. They know
Well,
that. Yeah, go on.
they're probably the rulers are probably trying to, if they don't, get cornered to where they push the red button, they're trying to make sure they're probably I can't say for sure, but they're probably trying to ensure that as the resources for the system become less available, that they get to maintain the technology and the computing systems and all that, while the rest of us basically go back to maybe a medieval standard of living. That's also probably in
Well,
their thinking.
a lot of the rest of us won't survive because medieval standard of living won't support the current population. So
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly. They
And they
want
don't give a crap about that,
they
about
want the
us.
they want the pyramid to burn from the bottom up. Yep.
yeah, so I think Cornford's point has led us to what could be really happening behind brinksmanship. Which is basically starve the paupers out.
Yeah, and it's really unstable and unpredictable. Who's to say how it's going to go? These guys are trying to manage a mounting disaster, and I don't think it's going to come out great for anyone at the bottom of the pyramid, like Divine Beast said. But it may not even come out great for them. Who knows?
Yeah, does anyone else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, maybe I do. Because there's a lot of things I actually can say about this, because we see now basically where they are pushing this whole carbon credit system. It's official now that the banks in Europe are basically, you can voluntarily participate in this program where they track all your carbon spending, and they will limit certain purchases from your credit card, where you are just basically bound to X amount of carbon on a weekly basis. They are trying to implement all these new control systems, and what I think they're trying to do now is bring down the old system so they can go and implement this new system, and it's going to be that CBDC we've been hearing about, combined, so this central bank digital currency combined with this carbon taxation, and that is basically why we are seeing all these things happening at this point. The war with Russia, that is maybe not tied into this whole, but what I think with the war of Russia is, like, basically all the last wars we've seen, they've always been for one thing, at least mostly one thing, and that is resources. We know Russia is the biggest landmass, has a whole bunch of resources, as does Ukraine. So it's really key for us, the West, to basically keep control of certain regions. So we are basically the beneficiary of those resources in those areas. And my idea is we're now definitely, we are seeing it here in Europe, where we are lacking certain resources. So we're doubling down on this whole Ukraine-Russia conflict as well on our end. So yeah, at least that's my take on it.
So just
Thanks.
on,
That's very
yeah, go on.
interesting. Thank you for that.
But Knox, on the CBDC thing,
Mhm.
so based on the discussion that me, DB, and Cornford just had, would that mean that, so if resources get tight in the future and everyone's under the CBDC, that they can limit your consumption through the amount of currency that's available to you?
They could easily do that, actually. And what actually the CBDC, it's like the central bank digital currency. So it would eliminate the in-between step where you today go to your bank and you deposit X amount of money, or you work and you get your money transferred to your bank account. That would all be centralized with that with the central bank, and they would be able to decide you get X amount of money or you don't get X amount of money, which could be basically tied into a UBI, a universal basic income. Which we know they have been talking about in Davos in 2018 and 2019. So that's what they've always been doing. They've been recording everything they said and openly broadcasting it. So the discussion of the
or
UBI.
based on it,
Hmm?
or based on your weight. They'll have a weighing scales going to the shop that you can step on.
They could. I'm not gonna say they're gonna do it, but they could easily do it. So I'm not gonna tell you they are gonna be a totalitarian ruler over you, but the possibility of this
That was a
central.
joke, by the way.
Yeah, no. But I'm serious here. I'm trying to not sell you something to the point where I think it's very interesting that these things are all lining up. But we have to be vigilant, of course, that we're still going for the facts here. And I think that is a very important thing. Where today we have so much information being bombarded at us from left and right that we sometimes forget to lose. We forget to keep that focus on what is true, because it's just too much. It's overwhelming, all the information that gets passed over us. And I think there it's very important to not say that this is going to be a fact, that is going to happen, but it is definitely an option that presents itself right now,
But it's actually interesting you say that, because when we were at the beginning of the meeting, the first people who were there were asking me how things were going in Ireland, and I was telling them, well, I'm not much out, but I was more talking about what was going on around me. And I mentioned the fact that people are getting more and more support for this energy crisis and for gas, for electricity, for heating in Ireland. So the very poor or the elderly or the unemployed are getting enormous amounts of money to cover a bit to soften the blow. And they have done the same during the COVID. And it looks like those sort of things are like trial runs, because people seem to be very calmed by these things. You don't see much reaction at the moment. Confed, you were mentioning the yellow vest protest, and if there's a squeeze like that on the poor. But if you are printing enough euros to give, to give them to soften the blow, people are going to get used to this UBI idea, and it won't be imposed. It will just happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree that is a definite option here. That people are just it's like the frog they boil slowly, where they just put a frog in a kettle, and if you turn up the temperature very slowly, the frog will never know. And it's basically the same principle here, where it is like a set of conditioning that we're seeing happening, and it has very horrible implications. This central bank digital currency, if they get that pushed through, they have now announced that they will start the trial runs with this central bank digital currency. So that was, I think, last week announced. So this is not just theory or fiction anymore. This is really something that they are beginning to implement, and people are basically, like you said, that they're docile for this. They will not protest it because they think it's a new normal, but you will not be able to save money anymore. They will be able to tell what kind of purchases can be done with this central bank digital currency. And that is where you definitely want to be. And that's where my feeling comes from, to be really self-sufficient and to be independent on your survival, basically. So you will not have to do in comfort. What we will also see, because of when this really gets rolled out in full, that we will see parallel economies come into existence, I think. And it will be, you do something for your neighbor, and that way that neighbor will do something back for you, just the old ways again, because if you go through the digital currency system, then yeah, you're basically giving that control to those people who control that money flow as well. And that is not going to be a country anymore or an elected government either, which is very scary.
Yes, of course. That's why there's some people stacking silver too. You know,
Yeah.
there are quite a lot.
It's
I'm sure
fascinating to
it's
watch
already an authoritarian. Sorry, Confed.
Oh, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, I'm sure it's already an authoritarian system. So yeah, I don't feel that scared of it becoming one, because I feel like I'm in one already.
Yeah, I agree with all this, and that was the nature of my comment. It's just amazing to watch the monetary system, which is, in my opinion, a lot of smoke and mirrors, just continue to compound on its own complexity to kind of ensnare people further.
Yeah, that's definitely a con game, isn't it? Everything about the money system.
And what Knox is describing here, of course, takes it still a step deeper, and keeping an eye on these parallel economies and getting involved in them as much as possible would be good for anyone who does it and good for their neighbors. As Sophie was saying earlier, working with your friends and neighbors.
Yeah, again, that's another terrifying prospect to me. The idea of having to be a farmer who fucking gets on with his neighbors.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a world like that.
But you don't choose the people you're with when you find yourself in a place. So you might as well make it work. You're not going to find the people who are going to have necessarily interesting conversations and seeing the world as you see it and have all, it's going to be all lovely. We'll sit around the fire, kumbaya. But, you're going to have to deal with what you have. So wherever you are, you might as well make the best of it. Like, I mean, I don't want to paint an idyllic picture of my life in the country. I mean, it's not that I'm saying when I'm talking about name, but there's practical people who are ready to render a service against another one and things like that. That's part of, it's part of practical living. It's not a ideological communism or any type of even anarchism lived by the book. It's where you are, where you just adjust.
Yeah, I think for us, it's going to be those things will come up when they come up. So the idea, because it's always, yeah, I again, it's another one of those ideas that I very much dig on the intellectual level, in the sense of, yeah, well, it's all about community. Community is the best currency, and so on and so on. Getting to know your neighbors, make yourself useful, and so on and so forth. But until that comes up as like a real practical necessity, it would be it's almost impossible.
I'm going to
Yeah.
give you a hint. Buy a fishing rod. Buy them in Little or Aldi when they come up now and again for, I don't know, €25. Try to catch a fish out of the Thames and gut that fish and eat it. That'll be your first step towards
Is that a suicide, isn't it? Shit laden fish.
I thought the Thames is now clean.
Yeah, no, it's not. I think because the all the English water companies are dumping their sewage now, according to the new. But yeah,
a different river.
Oh, please, God, I'd love to hear about your first fishing trip.
I used to go fishing when I was a kid, so actually that's
you told me that.
the alien idea. But yeah, MD, I'll go and get a fishing rod, and maybe find the opportunity to do that. Or can you get one out of the sea? Oh, that's full of shit as well now.
No, not everywhere. You can still find spots in rivers and in the north of England near the Lake District, and even in Wales, and you can find mountain streams where you're little lakes.
Yeah, fish is a good idea. I think I probably could handle that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the pollution of the planet, PCBs, heavy metals, all that stuff, and fish and whatever comes to get us all. But it sounds like we're all probably old enough that, well, we're not at risk for birth defects. So Oh well.
Yeah, we're all made of plastic now.
Yep.
Can I just come back to the Kumbaya point that you made, Inishman? It reminds me of something Lord used to say about the great Jim Bindell. I watched some of the COP videos there recently. I don't know if it was a scientist warning or which one it was, but he was basically speaking with the mirrors, space mirror reflectors guy, which I think is absolutely crazy. Just that these people are still going around and looking for techno solutions.
Yeah, I think Jem Bendel from the beginning said that he wasn't even opposed to all these carbon capture and even more those things that you put on the ice there to Oh no, I know he's. I don't try to put Jem Bendel now. I think I just avoid him.
Are they completely mad like that? Because
Yeah.
if you put mirrors in space now, up in space now, while you can, and then in a few years the economic system collapses and you can't afford to get back into space to take them down if they don't work, and they might be messing things up down here. I mean, it's completely crazy.
No, but the technology will save us.
Yeah, I think that there's
famous last words of the alien cortex.
Yeah, they don't think about how mirrors would slow down crop production or what the carbon balance is on sending rockets into space with all these materials, how that costs against the benefit you would gain. But I think there's two brands. I think that there's alien cortex madness that technology will always save us, just like you're saying, Sophie. And then, I think there's a whole bunch of people looking for a payday. These are expensive prospects that, a lot of money changes hands and people stand to make money off of it, so those things in some equal measure.
Well, the alien cortex is a narcissist. It wants to look in the mirror all day and think of how great it is.
Yeah, that'll end well.
Yep, narcissist drowned in the pool.
Famous doomers word.
They should send more scope and the other Amazon with his what's his name? They had Bezos up in their rockets to clean the mirrors once they're up there.
Yeah, I hope they just keep going up and then never come back. That'd be great. We should start a betting pool. Sorry, I got kind of a sick sense of humor sometime, but so they're doing all this space tourism now. I kind of wonder who's going to buy their final ticket and blow up on launch. That might be kind of fun to bet on. Which first crew, what month does the first crew of millionaires heading to Mars explode on the launch pad?
But to be honest here, as an input, I think it's quite fascinating though how we see so many nations suddenly trying to do the outer space thing right now. It has been like dormant for so many years, and now suddenly everybody wants to get up into space. Every nation, like name me a nation that is not trying to get a base established up there.
Yeah,
that's quite fascinating though.
Me too. I've been wondering, are they in another missile race, or is this just smoke and mirrors for a boondoggle to siphon off money? What is behind that? That's really interesting. Do you have any theories?
Well, I remember when we talked about the Woo, technology like that is basically compensation for lacking mojo, i.e. imagination. They're trying to go through all this hard work of getting to space when you can do it in your house without slaves at all.
It's almost like because of a lack of control. This is just acting out.
Well, yeah, they're Vogons. Their imaginations are probably really impoverished, and so
it's too much control. It's too much control.
Yep.
Actually, that's what it is.
I'm going to put the first Irish pub in orbit.
That sounds like fun. I'd go there for a drink.
Bob can have a British pub across the road or across across the galaxy, I don't know.
I've just realized that there's 2 people from Ireland on this meeting. I can't believe it. Like, one of the tiniest country in the world. And look, 2 of us here.
Must say something good.
Ah, yeah.
Don't worry, I'm only putting on this accent.
No, I know that accent. I know where it comes from.
But Chad, back to the question from Knox about more countries going into space. I didn't realize it myself. Is that actually a phenomenon?
I'd heard something about the U.S. going back to the moon. I know China's doing a lot of work in space lately. It seems to me also like there's been a bit of an upswing in this kind of talk. And again, I'm just really curious if it's propaganda to shuffle money toward, missile makers and arms contractors, or if it's serious and real for some reason. I don't know what's behind it, but yeah, I feel like I've seen this a little bit also.
Well, to be honest,
wonder
I'm sorry.
I wonder if a part of the element is the space travel thing is also maybe a crisis cult in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, don't worry about these problems. We'll just go live on Mars, right?
Yeah, well, that's what that psychopath Musk is represents and embodies, this sort of thinking, and these total crazy people who have got a lot of money and who are in this race, and there's lots of them that we don't know, and that it's just psychopathy, complete unbridled because of money. So I mean, I don't see it any other way. Might be some other things to do with the Space Wars financing thing. I know there's a lot involved in there. And when did that start? That program on Space Wars?
Oh, Star Wars was in the 80s, basically.
80s.
Yeah, and yeah. Well, yeah, but I think definitely where SpaceX, so the company that Elon Musk owns, they had that returning rocket, and that changed the game. Maybe. Of course, look at what Musk owns, what kind of companies besides Twitter, of course. All of these companies aligned would make the perfect space mining company. Like basically has all the tools to start up a space mining company once they learn how to get to an asteroid and come back. So doesn't surprise me that he has endless amount of money at his disposal. If he can make that happen, basically the person who does that will be the richest person on earth.
I mean, at the moment, the man doesn't seem to be able to manage a text-based social media network. So, I mean, I'm curious to hear how many people still want to go to Mars with him.
I would never go to Mars because that would be a one-way ticket, and that wouldn't be a thing. But to be honest, like I think Musk by itself with the whole Mars and everything, it's just basically PR. It's just show, smoke and mirrors, because basically, like I said before, just take all his company, the boring company, the Tesla, the self-driving car, take the returning rocket from SpaceX, and you basically have all the elements in place to go about and do space mining and bring resources back to Earth, or maybe Mars, or whatever he wants to do on that front. But I think as well, like the managing of the companies is not just Musk alone. He's just the front guy. He's just the public figure here, because no.
Oh yeah, he looks sick.
Companies.
He looks like an idiot. I've never seen the guy say a word that makes me think that he could organize a piss up in a brewery. He just seems like a complete nincompoop.
But yet he has all these companies who create a revenue, apparently.
Yeah, but that's just to do with. I mean, I don't even know what that's to do with, but I don't think it indicates any intelligence to have a company or any companies. You got lucky with PayPal. Was that like make you a genius? You came up with a payment system, an alternate credit card processing thing.
Well, I think like in the majority of things, like he didn't even come up with it. He just basically wrote on the idea. It's the same as the Tesla car that was not invented by him. He just purchased, and that's basically yeah, Musk itself, like he's just a guy who was at the right place at the right time, I guess, and got born into the right family. That's all I gotta say on that front.
Yeah, mining family with lots of lithium rights gets
exactly.
into the lithium battery industry. That's all.
What a coincidence.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and went through college and everything, falsifying degrees and everything, buying everything his way up.
Yeah.
So buying himself, he had the money to start everything he wanted. So to me, he's a total idiot. Yeah, he's really, really like wow. But he's a gigantic alien cortex, that's for sure. So he can scheme and plan and especially when it comes to finance, he might be successful. He is. But he might not. It might not bring him too far when he starts to. If you start to talk about what's happening with Twitter at the moment, because I think that looks like a complete mess up from my.
Maybe we'll get to watch him have a complete mental breakdown over Twitter. That might be kind of funny to see.
Well, that's what can happen to narcissists if they have a breakdown, they can collapse.
It is happening, isn't it? Fingers crossed. It'll be hilarious.
But it would be better to follow the idea that you had of waiting for a bunch of those billionaires or millionaires even to go into space and have somebody on board and just boom. You know, that's I think we should write a book about that actually.
Yeah, they should go back to the Pleiades and never come back.
Yeah, set them on a course for infinity. Bye. Hey guys, it's nearly 3 hours. I think we're going to have to. Well, personally, I'm going to have to go to bed.
Yeah, same here.
Not a bad idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a good one.
Yeah,
So,
thanks everyone. Great chatting with you all.
Yep.
Can you do the honors, Bob?
Are we going to do the ending credits? Okay. I'd like to say thanks to Knox MD for getting stuck in today, as well as Cornfed, who's also becoming a regular fixture, which is making things interesting and entertaining for everybody, which is great. Now we're going to take a moment to silently reflect on what has just passed and to let it all go. We're going to let all the thoughts and ideas that we've had drift off into the ether. We're going to take a moment to have peace. Ding! Just remember, nothing is real. It's all just water under the bridge.